What up, party people? So, I got a haircut today. I don't know if it looks good or not. Hopefully it'll grow in, but um I had a good talk with my barber today. We talked a bit about psychology and the modern like dream, I suppose. And I think the biggest takeaway that I think is super cool is this idea that everybody thinks they're a main character, but none of us are. And so, social media has created this landscape where everybody sees what everybody else has, and naturally humans want what they don't have. Like, if you have a small home, you want a big house. If you have a big house, you wish you had less responsibility and therefore a smaller house. And so we always want what we don't have. And so part of the human condition is coming to terms with and basically being able to sit with that hunger of wanting what we don't have, because we can't have it all. We want it all, but we can't have it. But with social media, you see what everybody else has. And so this wanting for what you don't have has become not just a dream or an idea, but physically there. So you can see all these things that you don't have. And so basically, it's created a generation, my generation, of people who basically compare their lives constantly to other people's. And so naturally, we all feel like we don't have enough or that we want more. And this psychological desire of not having enough has basically made us feel like we are not enough. And that has led us to want to be this main character. Because what being the main character really is trying to be important. And because, say, I want to be main character, whatever that means, then that basically just means that I'm trying to compensate for feeling like I'm not the main character. And so in wanting to be a main character, the reality is that I feel like I'm not. And I feel like I'm not a main character because I'm constantly comparing myself to other people. And the reason why I'm comparing myself to all those other people is because they are posting on social media, and social media only shows the good and not all of the bad in the reality. You only see what they want you to see. And so we basically just talked about this idea that my generation is so socially connected and yet so divided at the same time, because we all have far more connection because of social media than we ever have, and yet we have the least deep relationships because everybody hides behind their phone and nobody is vulnerable, and basically everybody's connected, but it's fake. It's all fake. And so it's created a generation of people who all think that they're the main character, but the reality is that everybody's just insecure and nobody's the main character. They're just trying to compensate, myself included. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, because it explains why everywhere, all over social media, everybody's talking about how to get rich quick and basically showing you all the good parts of their lives. Is we're all just trying to basically compare each other. It's like a cockfight. Like, everybody wants to be the best, but the reality is there's a second richest person in the world. So somebody with $250 billion is still not the best. They're still not the main character. And what even defines a main character? Is it money? Like, what is it? The reality is that nobody is a main character. There's just people who are more successful than others and people who fulfill their desires more than others. But social media has created this idea of a main character that just doesn't exist. Nobody is the main character, because we're all going to die, and then there's going to be more generations after us, and there is no main character. We're just people. And society has basically become each individual so connected and yet closed off, because it's sad, but it's the reality. And so I think it's really neat, because it helped me learn a lot of my psychology around the fact that, like, I want to be a main character and I want to be like that guy. And we talked about the idea of doing it alone. Like, everybody seems to sell you that in order to be successful, you have to isolate yourself and do it alone and suffer. But we seem to associate discipline and suffering with success, because you have to be disciplined and you have to suffer in order to be successful. But for some reason, we also associate pain and misery with discipline and, like, suffering. But suffering doesn't have to be bad. So we're associating misery with suffering and suffering with success. And therefore, we're associating success with misery. And so we think that in order to be successful and to be rich and to have a lot of money and a lot of physical material possessions or relationships or whatever your definition of success is, we think that we need to suffer for that. We think that we need to be miserable. But and the whole thing is self-defeating, because you think that when you're successful, you'll be happy, but in order to be successful, you have to be miserable. And so we've just been sold this idea that in isolation, we need to be miserable and suffer in order to become successful. But the reality is yes, you need to suffer and yes, you need to be disciplined, but you can actually be happy. Like, just because you're going to the gym and it's hard to lift doesn't mean you're miserable. You can actually like doing that. And so this whole idea is being sold to us that's we need to be miserable in order to be successful, and that's just not the reality. And it's the same lie that's being sold to us that we need to do it alone, because if you ask any successful person out there, they did not do it alone. They either met someone, they networked enough, or they were very, very well off to begin with. And there's like 99 out of 100 times somebody didn't isolate and do it alone. That's just not what happened. That's what people snapshot like 1% of the journey as. But the reality is that they knew people and they networked and they worked with people and they learned from people. They had mentors. They had either good parents, they had good family. They didn't do it alone. Nobody did it alone. And everybody seems to think that you need to push all of your friends away and do it alone in order to be successful. And it's crazy because everybody thinks the same way. And if everybody thinks the same way, then it won't work. The whole idea of being successful is doing something different to set you apart from the pack. But if the whole pack thinks you need to do it alone, we're all screwing ourselves, because it also comes back to the idea that you are only as good as your enemy is. So pick a good enemy. And that's basically the idea of, if you're going to the gym and you go to the gym with people who are stronger than you, you're probably going to grow a lot faster. You're probably going to lift heavier. You're probably going to push yourself more because you are the weakest person in the room. Same way that the saying goes is, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. Because if you're the smartest person or the strongest person in the room, you're not going to push yourself because you know you're already the best. You're going to let off the gas. But if you're the weakest person in the room or the dumbest person in the room, you're going to try and study harder. You're going to try to lift heavier. You're going to push more because you want to be better. Humans hate losing, but when we win, we get lazy. And so it's the exact same idea that if you isolate and you're alone and you think that you need to be alone, then who do you compete with? Yourself. And so you become your worst enemy, and that's why you become miserable. So you isolate thinking that that's the only way to success. And then you become your own enemy, and then you become miserable. And then becoming miserable, you suffer. And then maybe you do get some sort of success, and then you have this idea that, oh, well, I need to be alone and miserable in order to be successful. But that's just not how it works. If you had instead met people who were better than you, maybe mentors, any of that, surrounded yourself with them constantly, so you constantly have the desire to be better, and then eventually you become successful, then you realize that the truth, 99% of the time, is that you surround yourself with people who are better than you, and then you have discipline and work hard to become better, and then you're successful, and you actually are happy because you're with your friends and you're with these people that you're competing with, instead of being alone and lonely and miserable and isolated. And then you get to the top and you don't have anybody to celebrate it with because you pushed all your friends away to go chase this dream that TikTok sold you. I think it's just so fascinating how it all connects. So, like, to wrap this up for today, is the three main ideas that kind of all are intertwined is this idea that everybody wants to be the main character or thinks that they're the main character, but the reality is that none of us are. And this is because of the comparison game on social media has led us all to want to be better than everybody else. And so therefore, the reality is that we all want to be main characters because we're insecure that we don't have enough or we're not enough. And so we're chasing after that golden idea, that idolized idea of being the main character. But all it is an insecurity. Nobody's actually the main character here. The reality is that you find people who are like you and you share with those people. Like, we are a community. There's no one person who is the main person. We're all each individually our own people and have our own stories. And so you're never going to be the main character. And if you think you are, then that's just because you're trying to run away from some insecurity. The second idea is that our generation is super isolated, and they seem to be so isolated even though they have access to social media, because it's a game of show. So it's fake. And so everybody's trying to show everybody else online what they have, but nobody actually talks. We all hide behind our phones. And so for having so much connection, we're the least connected generation. We're so ununified. And that's because we don't actually talk to each other. We basically just play like a pissing game on social media about who has more and who's better. And then the third point is the idea that you need to isolate and to be alone and to suffer and be miserable in order to be successful is kind of just a lie you're being told because it sounds cool. And the only reason it sounds cool is because being alone and doing alone, it makes you feel like a main character, which goes back to the exact same problem. Is it's all this lie that's been sold you on social media of isolating to become the best, or that you need to be a main character. It's all just the fact that you're trying to prove yourself in some way. You're trying to run away from some sort of insecurity that you're not enough. And that insecurity is in most of us, and it's because of social media. And so, because of social media, which I know I'm not helping this because I'm posting on YouTube, but at least it's like maybe somewhat helpful, is you're trying to compare your life to everybody else because they only show you what you want to see. And so you have the insecurity that their life is better than yours, and then you try to go after them. But the reality is that you'll never catch them, and everybody is miserable, and everybody's comparing. But nobody actually has the perfect life. Nobody is actually the main character, but it's a lie. So it all comes back to that and the comparison game on social media. And so if you can remove yourself from that, then you're going to stop thinking you need to be main character. You're going to actually start living your life like you should. And you're going to make friends, and you're not going to try and isolate, because that's not really how the world works. We're social creatures. Like, locking in and isolating is not the reality of how things go down. That's how you become miserable. And misery is not the only path to success. People seem to associate misery with success because discipline can be miserable, and success requires discipline. But they think that therefore that means that like success is miserable. But some people like working hard. Some people like being disciplined. And that's what you need to become. So that's a good summary for today. It's also why I'm making these videos in the first place, because social media has been so overcrowded with unrealistic expectations and fake, highly edited, unrealistic expectations that everybody seems to have, and nobody actually shows you the good and the bad sides and the reality of, like, life is pretty boring every single day, and it's repetitive, and it's not that exciting, but you only get to see the 1% highlights, not the 99% where the actual work happens. And so that's why I'm logging these, is because most of these days I have nothing to give you. This is completely pointless. The last week I've just been like, I didn't do anything today, I ate bad food, and I'm going to bed. That's what reality is like, but this is boring for everybody to see, but that's reality. And so at least, maybe it's boring and nobody watches it, but at least they know, and it sets expectations for what the real world is like. Because everybody else is showing you random BS that they want you to see, but they're not showing you the boring parts, because then you don't get views. But I don't care about views. This video doesn't have any views. Look at the last 5 videos. There's 1 view on these last 5 videos. Like, I don't care about your views. I'm doing this because one day, when I am successful, then you'll go see this, and then you'll realize that, oh wow, that's actually how you become successful. It's boring, and it's actually kind of normal, and it's what I'm already doing. It's not what social media is telling me to do, because it's for clicks. That's all it is. It's crazy. It's so crazy. But I hope that you actually listen to this, and that somebody sees this, because I believe it, and I'm going to change it, because I want to help people. So, good night.